Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. My name is Jordan, and thank you guys for tuning in, listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed your Father's Day weekend. We had a nice little break from NASCAR. We did have some American IndyCar as well as Formula One racing going on in the North American hemisphere. But let's go ahead and dive into this past weekend. This past weekend we were at Nashville Superspeedway. So we had all three races running, and it ended up being a good race in my opinion. A lot of them. So we'll go ahead and dive in on the truck series. We had some top people up there. Nick Sanchez, Bailey Curry, Rajah Caruth was a big surprise. Qualifying 1, 2, 3. We had Carson Hocevar 7th, Grant Enfinger 6th, Tanner Gray 5th, Corey Heim 4th, Zane Smith was 8th. Daniel Dye and Taylor Gray rounded out the top 10 in qualifying. This was overall a good race. The trucks looked very loose compared to some of the other racing that happened this weekend. And it showed with the cautions that we had and just people coming out. I mean, our first caution came out, and it was because of Haley Deegan. She just ended up getting loose. I wouldn't say it was, running out of talent or anything. Maybe, people would argue differently. But she did get loose and cause a little bit of an accident, and it just kind of it hurt him. We also had a couple other guys. Lawless Allen got knocked out. Dean Thompson did some weird stuff, especially on pit road. For one guy that kept complaining about everybody else, man, he drove right into another car on pit road, or another truck. And it's like, is it your fault? Was it your spotter not paying attention? Your crew chief? Usually your crew chief's checking those, because he was right out of the box and he just went all the way to the outside. And, that's what you're supposed to do if there's nobody around. But then there were people there and he just bounced off of them. The biggest disappointment, and I say it's not because of talent or anything, it was Rajah Caruth. He finished 32nd. He actually was fighting for the lead in the beginning of the race, and he was doing really well. His fuel pump just went out, and it hurt him so stinking bad. It was very disappointing in my opinion, because he showed a lot of poise, and I think he could have done something well there. So if we keep on moving forward, we did have a good fight going back and forth, especially with the restarts that we had between Nick Sanchez, who was doing really well. He ran and led 37 laps. Corey Heim was one of the top guys. He ran 57 laps. Zane Smith had his hat in the running. And, between the three of those guys and plus our winner, everything, this was some good racing. They were going back and forth. They were sliding around, racing 2 wide, 3 wide. It was really good, really strong showing from Nick Sanchez. And again, like I said, Rajah Caruth, these guys coming out of ARCA last year, rookies in this truck series, and they are putting on a show, in my opinion. They're doing really well. Some of their finishes aren't finishing for it, like this one here for Caruth. But, he's coming out here and he's kicking some tail, and that's great to see. I can't wait to see him in some equipment that doesn't fail. But again, that's kind of the truck series. You have more issues with the trucks than you do with like an Xfinity or going forward. Not to say that those issues aren't in the higher series. I don't know if maybe it's something to do with the fact of the equipment or the cost of everything, and these are lower teams. I'm not sure. But anyway, Matty D was doing really well. He was getting up there, man. He was hauling towards the end. He put fresh tires on. And I think if we had a few more laps to go, he probably would have been one of the top guys up there. He did finish 7th, but he was coming from, I think, almost the rear at the last restart. And he was just passing people left and right. So, it was pretty good. It was fun to watch. So our final and our winner was Carson Hocevar. I'm happy to see him start winning because I think he deserves it. I'm not saying anybody else doesn't, But I mean, he's been putting in a lot of work. We follow him. We cheer for him. This is his second win of the season. He's got it on this track as well as at Texas. So kind of just going forward with all that. We'll go back and look at the standings here. So regular season standings, we're looking at Corey Heim, Zane Smith, Grant Enfinger, Ty Majeski, Ben Rhodes, Kristen Eckes, Carson Hocevar, Matty D, Matt Crafton, and Nick Sanchez are your top 10. So when we start going into playoff, it doesn't really change so much. Nick Sanchez jumps above Matty D and Matt Crafton. Ty Majeski, he's up there. He was fourth. And then you have all your winners. And remember, one of the things that kind of rubs some people the wrong way with the winning is if a Cup Series regular comes in here or somebody that's not running the race. I mean, you could argue that with Ryan Truex, but I think, well, he ran it in Xfinity, but kind of the similar, same deal, where if they are competing for a higher series, they do not count towards the standings, but they take the points. I think NASCAR needs to work on doing something like that, to granting more points to maybe the second place winner if it is not if it's somebody running for the Truck Series championship. So here we go. We got Corey Heim, number one. He's got 1 win. Zane Smith, 2 wins. Christian Eckes, 2 wins. Grant Enfinger, 2 wins. Carson Hocevar has 2 wins now, as we were talking about earlier. Ben Rhodes, he has 1 win, and then we go into our winless guys. And remember, on the Truck Series, we jump right into top 10. We don't do top 15, top 12, anything, or 16, 12. They are top 10 because they run less races. So we're looking at there. You have Ty Majeski, Nick Sanchez, Matty D, Matt Crafton are in, and it is close. Stuart Friesen, Tanner Gray, and Chase Purdy are the guys that are sitting on the outside. And we're talking Stuart Friesen and Tanner Gray are only separated by 6 points to the cutoff line. So it's going to be interesting to see, if Matt Crafton can kind of get it together and stop his ups and downs, because he's one of these guys that, back in the day, he was ripping and roaring and doing well. But recently, it's been hit or miss on his racing. And I say recently, the past few years, whether or not he can get something out good and do it well or not. We'll just have to see what happens there. I could see him. Matty D's been on a purpose. He's 14 points to the good. And then you have Nick Sanchez that's up there. He's right there as well. They all have 2,003 points in the point standings. We'll see what happens. So it is close. We'll see. I don't know what will happen with that, but we'll see going forward. The next race for those guys with the Truck Series is going to be Saturday the 8th. So not this weekend, next weekend. They're going to be at Mid-Ohio running a road course. We'll see who that benefits on this. And then we'll go to Pocono. Then we'll have Richmond. And then we have a break. And then we go to Indianapolis Raceway Park, Lucas Oil. And that's whenever we do the road course for the other guys at the Brickyard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and plays out with the Truck Series and their playoffs and see how everything works. So moving on to Xfinity, let's go ahead and talk about the Xfinity race and how everything happened there. We'll go ahead and start off with qualifying. Cole Custer's been doing really well. He got the pole this race. Chandler Smith, Sammy Smith, talk about confusing for some of these guys calling races. Ty Gibbs, Riley Herbst, Zane Smith, another Smith, Austin Hill, Carson Hocevar, Kyle Sieg, and Parker Retzlaff. All those guys were in the top 10 on qualifying. Some of the notable in the back. And we're talking, again, you have Cup Series regulars. And it's been argued that some of these guys that are running in this race, they just got out of Xfinity, so you give them a little bit of leeway, not like a Kyle Larson, somebody like that, William Byron. But so you had your Cup Series regular in there. Ty Gibbs, as we mentioned already. AJ Allmendinger was in there running. And as far as I know, I think that's everybody that was running, that runs the Cup Series that came down and raced. Race ended up being a good race. I think they had more wrecks than they did in the other series, in the truck series. But, it all came out. There was some complaints over the radio that got brought up, especially listening to NBC and their broadcast, that a couple of these cars, they had damage to their fenders in the back and quarter panels, and it pretty much gave a quote-unquote parachute to them, giving them more downforce. I don't know. I could see the argument there, but at the same time, they didn't do it on purpose. They got wrecked. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the top 10. We had Parker Retzlaff, Cole Custer, Daniel Hemrick, Zane Smith, John Hunter, Josh Berry, Austin Hill. Sam Mayer got third. Riley Herbst got second. He was doing really well in this race. And then A.J. Allmendinger won the race, which is good to see him actually win an oval, because if you know anything about A.J., he's more of a specialist when it comes to road courses. So just to see him come out and win more ovals, that's great, I think. He did well last year when he was running full-time down in Xfinity, running some of these cars too, and doing some of these ovals. But, as he said in a post-race interview, I love winning on ovals. I know a lot of people doubt me on an oval, and it kind of goes back to his open wheel rate, days, and his reputation as one of the best road course drivers. I mean, you can almost put him with a Boris Said when it comes to ringers. So, yeah, he did really well. Ty Gibbs, he was up there hanging around for a while. He ended up not finishing too hot. I don't even see him on here. Anyway, yeah, he kind of was iffy. He actually hit the wall. That's what happened. He wrecked. Yeah, more than I don't think about it. Yeah, he had some issues. He wrecked. It wasn't his best. He spun. A lot of these other guys that were up there running, they did well. And once again, at least somebody that we had two people from Junior Motorsports that were making last minute charges and going in. You had Sam Mayer finish third and Josh Berry finish fifth. So, it looks like it's going to be pretty good going forward. I'm curious to see what will happen on the next race. We'll go ahead and get into a little bit of news of that. We're going to have Justin Marks running one of the cars. I think he's running the 10 car, even though that doesn't make sense because that's a caller car. But he's going to be out there running on Xfinity Series, and that'll be interesting to see. So if we go ahead and look at the Xfinity Series standings, we'll go ahead and start with the regular season standings. We have John Hunter, Austin Hill, Justin Allgaier, Cole Custer, Josh Berry, Chandler Smith, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Riley Herbst, Daniel Hemrick. That finishes off your top 10. And then if we go into playoffs, unlike the Truck Series, we do top 12 as your first cutoff in Xfinity. And you have John Hunter with 2 wins, then Austin Hill with 3 wins. He was doing really well, and he's kind of tapered down a little bit. We'll see if he can kind of bring back a strong surge or not. I don't know. Justin Allgaier with 1 win. Cole Custer with 1 win. Chandler Smith with 1 win. Josh Berry's up pretty high on points only. Then you got Jeb Burton with 1 win. Sheldon Creed up there with points only. Sammy Smith up there with a win. And then your bottom 3 are Sam Mayer, Riley Herbst, Daniel Hemrick. And then looking on the outside, we have Parker Kligerman and Brandon Jones are your 2 looking on the outside. We have a little bit more races than we do with Truck Series, so we'll see how this plays out. It's hard to start speculating on all this and what's going to happen with that. But we'll go forward with that and see what happens. Our next schedule for the Xfinity race, we do have, they're calling it the Loop 121. It is the Chicago race that they're doing this weekend. That'll be at 5 Eastern on Saturday. And then we go to Atlanta, New Hampshire, and then Pocono. So you can see there's that big space when Xfinity is going to be at New Hampshire with Cup Series, when they're going to be at Atlanta. That's when we're going to see Mid-Ohio for the trucks. And then we go on, and Pocono is going to be the next time, I believe, that all 3 are together again. So let's go ahead and move forward to the Cup Series race. Man, Cup Series race was fun. I liked watching it. The only thing that I'm kind of iffy about was the fact that it was a late race and they ran the race on Sunday night instead of running it on Saturday night. So people had to go to work and whatever. If you had to go sleep early, you missed it. And you missed one heck of a race. So starting off, we had the Toyotas putting off a really strong comeback from the start of the season. They were iffy in the start of the season. It was questionable. They didn't have the speed. They were just getting their rear ends kicked. And then moving forward, they slowly started putting more in. So we'll go ahead and start with our top 10 on qualifying now. This wasn't lineup, and I'll explain why. So you had Daniel Suarez 10th, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., William Byron, Joey Logano, Justin Haley, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain. So the reason I said this isn't starting lineup is Suarez and Bubba, both in their qualifying laps, they spun. The only thing with Suarez is he spun and hit the wall, so he ended up having to go to a backup car, which sent him to the back of the pack. Bubba spun, but surprisingly, he didn't catch the grass and mess up his splitter, any of that. He just ended up clearing through, smooth sailing, and got through it all. So just going through the race, this was a very less caution-filled race. I can only remember one or two cautions, and I'll kind of nitpick this with NBC and their broadcast later when we finish up talking about the races. There was some good showing, from the Toyotas. I mean, Tyler Reddick was up there running really well. He was the first caution outside of the stage cautions, if I remember correctly. He actually lost the wheel on green flag pit stops. So he's going to be out of tire changer and jackman for the next 3 races, if I remember correctly. And they're going to get fined. But he lost it. He came back. And, I mean, I think if he didn't have that issue, he might have won this race because he was that strong. Other people that had strong showing, Denny Hamlin, he led 88 laps. Then Martin Truex Jr., he was rolling. He was leading at the front. I think he could have had a chance to win if he would have passed Denny earlier through lap traffic. He led 50 laps. And then our winner, Ross Chastain, got his first win of the season, smashing those watermelons, southern pumpkin. And he led 99 laps. He came from the back pretty much. Now he started first, but he had some issues and he had to go towards the back just during racing. I can't remember if it was a penalty or just he got shuffled towards the back and his car wasn't as strong in the beginning. But just to give you an idea, stage 1, he ended up finishing, he finished second in stage 1, stage 2, third. So he's proven me wrong here. But it almost feels like he was kept having to come back from the back and come forward. Another guy that kept coming from the back doing well was Kevin Harvick. He had a speeding penalty. His car wasn't as great, but he ended up showing himself. He finished top 10, stage 2, and you can kind of see where he was hurting. Stage 1, he was in the back. He was 18th, and then he ended up finishing the race. He finished the race. Fortunately, it looks like towards the back. Yeah, towards the back. 24th. So he had that strong running, and then he came back. But, what I see from these races, and I see a lot of people talking about it, is the Toyotas are making their comeback. They're doing strong. We'll see what happens going forward with the Toyotas. I think they're actually making their presence now, and we'll see what happens. I like to see more manufacturers than just a Chevrolet winning all the time because that seems like what it is. And more times than not, with the exception of Kyle Busch this year, he's kind of putting a change to that. It's mostly Hendrick Chevrolet's winning. So one of the big cautions that happened was on a restart. I think it was the 6 car. So Keselowski, he was having some issues, and something happened. And Kyle Busch got in the back of him. They both spun. And it was one of those things that was kind of somebody missed something happened. We had a lot excuse me, during a lot of this restart here, because this was a restart after Reddick, that you had a lot of guys. Actually, sorry, it wasn't the restart after Reddick. It was another restart later on. I think it was the end of the stage. You had a lot of issues there with the fact that you had intermingling between your lap traffic and your freshly pitted traffic. So with this, and this was what makes me want to remember, which my mind's cloudy because watching College World Series, but that's what makes me think this was after the Reddick caution and it wasn't a stage caution because of everybody kind of going back and forth in between with the cautions and pitting, because Reddick's issue happened during green flag pit stops, which at the time I thought it was going to hurt Truex and some of these other guys like Denny, just because they had just finished pitting and they were a lap down, but luckily everything was cycling through and they ended up starting fourth or so. But anyway, going back to Blaney's wreck, him and Kyle Busch got into it and it wasn't really necessarily their fault. I want to blame Keselowski for something happened with him. I don't know if he slipped or what, but he just went back quick. And Blaney spun, he went across, and he ended up hitting the interior wall, and he smacked it hard. I think something broke on his car because he thought he wasn't going to hit it the way he did, and he just hit it. So he hit it so hard that, it crushed the car in the front, so the clips were doing well. Good thing Penske put those in already. And then he went out and he hit it, and he got out of the car, and he dropped to his knees. It hurt him bad. So it was just imagine what would have happened if we didn't have those safety changes that NASCAR told the teams to start implementing. I don't think they need to implement those until they get to Atlanta, if I remember correctly. But a lot of these guys have already done it just to do it. So going forward with that, I know he came out in his conference and he's like, I don't understand why we don't have safer barriers on here. I will pay for the beeping things is pretty much what he said to everybody. So, that's one of those big things that kind of stunk with that. Blaney had a hard, nasty hit. He had a decent car, and he's been kind of quietly mediocre to best at most throughout the whole race. So overall, I think he would have done really well. I think Truex would have maybe caught Ross Chastain towards the end, but that was tough because he was saying he ran out of his tires quick and all that. And it was just a tough racing, but congratulations to Ross Chastain on that race. So we're going to go ahead and move forward, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the regular season. Truex did extend his regular season points. He's only up by 1 now, but you got Truex, William Byron, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Blaney, Larson, Logano, Keselowski, Buescher, Reddick, Stenhouse, and Bubba are your top 15. We're going to go for top 15 because we cut off at 16 for playoffs. So playoffs, we're looking at William Byron. We are looking at Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, Ross, Larson, Denny, Christopher Bell, Blaney, Logano, Reddick. Then we have a break with a no-win Kevin Harvick coming in. Ricky Stenhouse at 12th. Keselowski, Buescher, Bubba, Suarez are your top 16. Looking in just barely, that's Suarez, Bowman right there. And Ty Gibbs is quietly sitting there as well. You're looking at, Daniel Suarez and Alex Bowman. They're only separated by 2 points in regular season. And then you got Ty Gibbs just sitting there right behind them at 10 points behind Daniel Suarez. So this is going to look interesting. It's going to look really good. So correction on that. Truex is up by 18 points on regular season. He's got 576. William Byron's got 558. Byron's got a 1 point lead when it comes to playoff points because he's got 3 wins versus the 2. But Truex has got 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s. He's been doing well. William Byron's been up there. I think Byron is Hendrick's horse. I think I've said that before on this podcast. I'd like to see Corey LaJoie get up there. He's pretty far back. He's about 50 points back, 45. But we'll see what happens. He's sitting 21st in playoff standings, and anything can happen. I like to talk about that quote from Waterboys, last play of the season, can't hold anything, last game of the season, can't hold anything back kind of idea. So just moving forward with this, we have the Chicago street race coming up. Then we go to Atlanta, New Hampshire, and Pocono for NASCAR. The street race is going to start July 2nd at 5:30 Eastern. So we have another kind of evening race. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the Chicago street race. I mean, Chicago, as everybody knows, is not the best city in the world when it comes to safety and crime. But with that being said, hopefully they get this thing straight up. I hope they get enough people there. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not as well, but only time will tell. I know that a lot of these guys are not calling it a race, which I think is kind of silly because it is a race. I think they're calling it an event because of everything going on. They got a lot of concerts and so on going on with it as well. So with that out there, we'll see what happens. I don't like to see these new races like this. Like, I get if you go into a new track, like they went to Nashville a few years ago and started racing back there, but you're making a street race, make that the exhibition race, in my opinion. But going forward here, we'll talk about some of the things that have happened now over the past 2 weeks, just about now, a week and a half. Josh Berry is now the officially number 4 driver for the 2024 season for Stewart-Haas Racing. He signed that last week. Congratulations to Josh. I can't wait to see what he can do up here. He's worked his tail off to get all the way up here. Let's see what he can do. Give him a chance. I know Tony Stewart made a comment, and I think it's kind of interesting, his comment. He's like, I like to see these guys with talent come out here and do this. I don't want to see people, you see all these people paying their way through. I don't like that. It's like, dude, come on. So moving forward with that, we had a rumor that Andretti Motorsport wants to come into NASCAR. We'll see what happens with that. Some questions have been raised recently also because we've been seeing a lot more Carl Edwards out at the track. Whether or not he's going to make a one-off or not, he's kind of squashed those, but I wouldn't leave it out just because some of the comments that he made, especially around Darlington to Junior and so on. He's like, man, this is different. I think he actually said it on the Fox broadcast. I've been away too long. Whether that means he's going to get into some kind of role with the team or with a broadcasting company, or if he's just going to be around the races more. So if you ever go to a race, keep your eyes out. You might see Carl Edwards. I know we're having some information come back to, we're going to have the broadcast deal coming up soon. We're kind of curious to see what happens with that. We've had a setback with Nashville Fairgrounds and disrepair and some silly thing that I heard they wanted to do with these cars. They wanted to put noise dampening walls in to stop the sound because people have been complaining about the sound and so on. I don't know how that's going to happen. I think that's just silly all in all. Then just going forward, we have a few other little nicks and knacks. We got the big thing coming up, Chicago Street Race. We'll see how that happens. We have some guys that have been making some quiet runs and staying in there. We'll see what happens with those guys. I mean, we could see like an Allmendinger, a Ty Gibbs. Those are two guys out of the normal that are road course strength guys. McDowell, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Truex, Larson, and Chase Elliott up there running. And, that's one guy we haven't really talked about too much either. He's 64 points back in the playoff standings. And this snowboarding ordeal, as well as some of the suspension that he had, that's starting to hurt him. Now, he's got a waiver that if he can get up there in points, he can get in. But at the same time, he's got to win and get in, if you ask me. And I think that's what's going to happen. So, overall, we'll see what happens going forward. It looks like it's going to pan out to be a good racing. To close off, NBC took over the racing for the next half, for the last half of the Cup Series in NASCAR season. And in my opinion, there were some hiccups One, we didn't have a pre-race that I could see unless they're putting it on Peacock, which they're charging people to get on Peacock now more. Then you have your other ones coming up, which were, it looked like their pylon was smaller to me. I don't know. I complained about this at the beginning, but I missed that little green line with Fox. They had atop their pylon that showed you how many caution laps and so on up there. I like that. And I saw that the NASCAR app started doing that too, so I'm happy to see that back. And then also, they let a lot of swear words fly on their broadcast. Like, they weren't censoring the radios. I don't know what was going on with that. But anyway, let's see what happens in Chicago Street Race. We have Saturday and Sunday starting roughly about 5 o'clock, both of them, 5:30 on Sunday, I believe it was. But we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. Now, hey, guys, I hope you like this podcast. I know a lot of it's me rambling on, a lot of my opinions. Armchair Crew Chief, that's kind of why I stick with that name. If you guys want to hear anything, any questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to drop them. Or if you know me personally, message me, and we'll get them sorted out. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.